So, good morning, everyone. We're just allowing an orderly queue, 2 meters space, to come in from the waiting room to join us at our webinar. So just to introduce myself, I'm Peter Woodward. I'm the moderator for this conference. I have a passion for all things sustainable and also deeply aware of packaging that comes into my household. So delighted to be involved today in developing this conversation around the circular packaging challenge. Right at the outset, just to confirm, as a webinar, you will be able to see everything that's going on, and your way of contributing will be through the chat function. And do please, if you've got thoughts, ideas or issues, please put them on the chat and we'll try to bring them into the conversation. But right at the outset, what I'd like to do is to invite Thomas Rydberg, who's the chair of the steering committee of the Circular Materials Conference, to offer you all a formal, but I'm sure informal, welcome to this webinar.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah. Thomas Rydberg here. You may have asked yourself what CMC Connected stands for, and CMC is the Circular Materials Conference. So this series of webinars is a kind of prequel to the Circular Materials Conference that will happen in April this year, and I'm sure Peter or Jon will show you the dates later on. So my role here is simply to wish you all welcome to this webinar, and I'm happy to see that so many have registered for the conference or for the seminar, sorry. And I hope you will later on obviously register for the conference as well. So yeah, I guess we're doing this as part of our way of dealing with the COVID situation. So we thought it was a good idea to have these online seminars with some time in between them, just to keep, let's say, the CMC spirit up during the times of, let's say, unnormal events. But this is almost going to be the new normal now, I guess, with a lot of online events. Anyway, I won't go on speaking any longer, but I will again just wish you warmly welcome to the seminar, and over to you back again, Peter. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you very much. Our format this morning is first of all, we've got 3 short interventions from key people who are trying to navigate a way forward into the world of true circularity, particularly as it relates to the issue of packaging. So we're going to hear some of the groundbreaking activity that's taking place. I've then got a broader panel who are going to join the speakers, and our conversation is really going to be around how do we genuinely take forward the circularity agenda, embracing packaging. Packaging is one of those, it's kind of a Cinderella area, because we're interested in the goodies inside the packaging. But obviously packaging is getting even more significant now with the glories of Amazon et al. We are suddenly deciding that we want everything put through our letterboxes and to our doors as well. So a fascinating area, many opportunities, but also, as they always say, I think some huge challenges with this uncoordinated and disparate world of packaging. So I hope we're going to be able to explore some of the emerging issues, how that journey is taking place towards circularity, what more needs to be done. And I think particularly looking at, is there a distinctive contribution that the Nordic set can make in being perhaps the beacon of hope, the leaders in that journey towards circularity in packaging. So as I say, we hope you very much enjoy this, and do contribute your own thoughts through the chat as we go through, and I'll try to bring those things in. So first of all, we've got 3 kind of short keynote presentations to try and open our eyes to some of the things that are going on. And delighted this morning to welcome, first of all, a good friend to the Circular Materials Conference, also someone who's been a driving inspiration of the sustainability agenda in his work with IKEA, and now very much part of the Ingka group. So delighted, Per Stoltz, welcome you, your sustainability leader for Ingka. And I know that packaging is a very significant part of the work that you're involved with. So really interesting. I don't think we've met up for about 18 months. So fascinated to hear how that journey is moving forwards within the retail sector, and maybe some of the key messages emerging for yourself. Per, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. And hi to all of you. Hopefully I can see my slides soon. Yeah, now they're coming. So I wanted to start very briefly to talk about circularity at IKEA, and then go over to more specifically the packaging. And circular, as you all know, is a tool to really bring the economy into the limits of a planet. So how we can create a better living for the many people in the limits of a planet. Next slide, please. And just briefly going through the main activities that we are doing around circularity, and starting with maybe the most important part, and how we design the products. And here is the first connection to packaging, because packaging is part of the product and needs to be designed in a circular way together with the product. It's really how to design for reuse and repurpose and recycling. Next slide. And also then to see these materials that we have today in our products as the banks for the future. So with circular tools prolonging the life of products and the materials will feed our supply chain with the material and components that we need for the future. Next slide, please. And the third part, where maybe me working at Ingka, being the retailer of the bigger IKEA, is looking quite a lot, is really how do we develop business models and services for circularity, how to engage in a totally new way with our customers. And this is really a fascinating area where we look at new opportunities like a product as a service, but also how we can contribute to prolonging the life of the products through second-hand sales, like we have done now in Retuna and Eskilstuna, where we opened the first IKEA second-hand shop in the world. And all of these activities are leading or giving us the pathway towards our objectives. Next slide, please. And it's really about having all products and packaging designed for circularity by 2030. All our materials should be renewable, sustainably managed, I must add on there, or recycled by 2030. And also then new ways of serving our customers to acquire, care, and also pass on the products in circular ways. And the fourth one is maybe the most important of them all, because we realize we cannot do this by ourselves. We need to join forces, collaborate with others to make this happen. Next slide, please. And now talking more specifically about packaging, I think it's impossible to speak about packaging, circular economy without mentioning the very, very strong trend towards omnichannel or e-commerce or whatever we call it. And this leads to a certain amount of challenges, like more packaging. If you wish, the box in the box situation, where we take a product which is packaged and we put it in another box for sending it home to the customers. Next, please. And also, due to many reasons, we see that there are more returns when it comes to multi-channel or e-commerce sales. You might not have understood the size of the product, it's not fitting, you have to sell it back. So there is a challenge about returns and the return logistics. Next, please. And also then this can lead to more damages. I've seen some figures that a package that is sold through a classic cash and carry sales, it's touched 7 times during the distribution. But when it comes to a customer home delivery or e-commerce delivery, it can go up to over 20. So there are many more opportunities for damages here. So these are maybe the biggest challenges that we see going forward. So what are we doing about it? Next slide, please. We have a set of what we call packaging principles that we use to design the packaging. And again, one of the first part of these principles is that the packaging is part of the product, and it needs to be designed in having in mind the whole distribution flow. So going from the producer to the store in case of cash and carry, but going also to the customer if it's omni-channel or e-commerce order. Next slide, please. And of course, one of the most very important points around in this principle is really what kind of material do we use for packaging. Even if the packaging is part of the product, the packaging life cycle is much shorter than the product itself, at least in our case, in IKEA. So the choices of material is super important, and really going towards renewable, but sustainably managed renewable material, and recycled material as well. Very important as well is to keep the material choice to materials that are recyclable in practice. As I said before, the package will live very shortly, and it's spread over many countries, many regions. So the material you choose needs to be practically recycled. It needs to be easy then for the consumer to do so. Next slide, please. A few words as well on specifically on how we manage e-commerce packaging and how we do the packaging. Here, there are 2 aspects that I need to underline. One is, of course, that if we do pack a box in the box and we leave a lot of air in the second box, of course, we are increasing the transport impact. But also, if we leave a lot of air in the product, we have potentially risks for damages of the product that is in the box. So optimizing the packaging solution is super important. And here we can see a couple of examples of machines that actually can optimize the size of the box depending on what you put in the box. Next slide, please. And then finally, it's impossible to talk about circular economy without mentioning reuse. Most of the IKEA packaging, we must say, are made for recycling. But really, how do we think about reuse? Because that's the best way of managing the packaging, you can say, from a circular perspective. And here we can see an example which we are testing. This is a system for home delivery or customer delivery, which is made up of different sections that can be then packaged together in a flat pack and go back to distribution centers and reused again. But also taking this slide as inspiration, there is something about circular economy and packaging that is definitely not or definitely new compared to the linear economy. All products that are transported home to the customer, they will have a return, you can say, whether that is secondhand sales or return for refurbishing or repair. That's different maybe, but also here for the return flows of products back into second life or back for repair, we need packaging. We need to protect the product going back. And this is quite unique for circularity because in the linear economy, nobody thought about this flow. So here it really is a challenge about how to develop packaging for these return flows. Next one, please. And then finishing off with saying the classic IKEA sentence, glorious future, most things are yet to be done. Thank you very much.
Per, thank you very much for that introduction. So many angles to the work going on there. Just a couple of questions. Just interested. I mean, the whole partly fueled by COVID, but that shift towards the e-world, the online world. I mean, just how significant is that shift?
It's massive, Peter. Right now, and in the situation of COVID, we have most of our stores, or many of our stores, I would say, are closed in many countries, and nevertheless, the e-commerce or omnichannel this setup has made us continue our activities. So you can has been a massive transformation from cash and carry into e-commerce. And we think that will remain,
right.
Definitely.
And if you look sort of 5-10 years down the road, I mean, do you think that's going to increase? Do you think it will be the main way of the world in the future, or are you not looking into that crystal ball?
I think it's about meeting the customer where they are, you can say, and traditionally we think about IKEA as the big blue box in the potato field outside the city center, and that's really that's not really where the customer are. The customer are in the cities, they are on online. So the omnichannel we're talking about it's expanding into city center stores in e-commerce, but also then in city center stores you might want to go there just to look at the stuff and then buy online and get them sent home.
Just one other one, just at this stage, all your pictures gloriously were exuding cardboard in every corner. I mean, are you seeing a dramatic shift towards sort of away from plastic towards cardboard? Is that a conscious thing, or is that just a practical thing, or just interested in a trend going on there?
It's definitely part of the transition, because as I said before, I mean, it needs to be practically recyclable, and plastic, even if it in certain aspects is a very good material, it has its challenges from a recycling perspective. So even if you have a plastic that theoretically is recyclable, maybe in 1 or 2 countries, we are distributing in many countries. So to move towards, you can say 100% renewable is very part of our strategy. It will take some time, but we have constantly reduced the amount of plastics in time, and the ambition is to go towards zero. Absolutely.
Right. So invest in cardboard manufacturers is the trick, is it?
It is the material where you have the most stable infrastructure in the world. So paper, I would say.
Right. Okay. We'll join you into the panel discussion shortly, but I just want to get 1 or 2 other presentations. But thank you very much for that introduction, Per. That was
great. Thank you.
Clearly, a huge issue is getting goods, whatever they are, safely to that point. The issue then is when we have unwrapped them, is how we get that material back around the loop, back for reprocessing, reuse, whatever. And our second speaker this morning, delighted if I can bring in Peter Mellgren, who's CEO of TMR, and TMR, Swedish nationwide collection and recycling organization. And Peter, great to have you with us. You are living every day the issue of packaging and collection and recycling. So great to have you with us, and interested in your sense of what's going on and maybe some of the challenges that you are trying to meet at the moment. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll try to share my screen like that. So I hope you see my presentation now. Yes, very good. Thank you. Yes, we are. We're living it's a very intense time also. So, well, let's see if I can make this work now. So, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this topic. I'm Peter Mellgren, co-founder of TMR. I've worked with producer responsibility since 1997, mainly packaging, but also electronics. For the last 3 years, the focus from lawmakers, producers, and consumers on recycling and packaging collection is beyond compare. So, in a sense, Peter, right now is the most inspiring time my company has ever experienced. So far, one might add. So I'll make a very, very short introduction of TMR. We started operations in 2005 as a competitor to a formerly monopolized market. We're based in Stockholm, but have operations all over Sweden. Most recent event for us is to start up a new production line to recycle complex plastics packaging. So I will come back to that later, but that was the introduction. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you would like to learn more about us. Now let's move on to a more familiar concept, the waste hierarchy. So we've left landfill. If ash is not taken into account, we still incinerate plastics, of course. So in Sweden, as in many EU states, the struggle today is to leave incineration behind and move on up for more recycling and one day circularity for all packaging. What I want to stress today is awareness of what is being done and what needs to be done. So if we are bold and look into the future, and if we are successful in our endeavor to reach circularity and have time looking up for the next level of the hierarchy, we find an anomaly: reuse. Well, I can tell you that is a terrifying concept for a guy like me. Collection and recycling is what I do. But nonetheless, I believe we now need to start integrating reuse in our minds, and to do so alongside all efforts for recycling and circularity. Well, there's very little to stick to figuring out how to reuse, at least in the sense of reuse for the same purpose. We have no idea what to do, to be honest. It's more or less pitch black for us. But however, in this darkness, we have found a little thread of thought that we're holding on to. I will come back to that thread shortly. Now let's move on to the most challenging area of our current situation: what is being done and what needs to be done in order to reach circularity for our plastic packaging. Well, there are, as I believe most here agree on, 3 key factors to be addressed accomplishing circularity for plastic packaging. And we believe all 3 have to be addressed simultaneously. Multitasking, if you will. So if we look into packaging design and what needs to be done there, much of today's plastic packaging is, as you know, not possible to recycle. Well, that is in existing recycling systems. And so the way forward in this area is a simple solution, really. Combining the knowledge from the 2 separate worlds of recycling and packaging design makes it possible to reach further than we are today. Our team of both design and recycling can bridge that gap. Many of our customers now creating more recyclable packaging, and a lot of companies, that's not our customers today, leaving carbon black, metallized foils, non-recyclable multi-layer plastics, etc. To summarize packaging design, making the right choice from the beginning simplifies and facilitates good recycling. So if we look at the recycle part of it, the recycling industry, all these design efforts need a corresponding recycling industry. The industry might think we can just sit still and await this great packaging design development, and they needn't change anything really. Well, as we all know, that's not the case. The recycling industry needs to develop as well. So one party stopper for the recycling industry, if there was one to begin with, is that a lot of the plastic packaging on the market has a significantly more important role to play than being easy to recycle. 90% of the carbon footprint, as you probably know, most people here today, comes from the food production. We can therefore not, in our eagerness to get more recyclable packaging, fiddle with the product's shelf life, trying to make packaging easier to recycle. It is counterproductive, of course. The conclusion is that the party is over almost before it began. The recycling industry must step up now. Well, problem is they haven't really. To get things started, compliance schemes like TMR and customers, producers have to do it. And so we have, with financial help from the Swedish government through Klimatklivet and Nestlé, we're now setting up a production line with new technique to recycle complex plastic packaging, such as food packaging. Packaging that is today being incinerated in most markets. We will recycle complex packaging into usable products instead of burning them. So we're happy with that, and we think it's a good thing. But the goal for our new production is to close the loop for plastic packaging to become truly circular and go back to new packaging. We all know how complex that is, but we have to start somewhere, and so now we have. Looking into the third key factor, well, that will be collection. All efforts just described will be futile unless supported by efficient collection. About 40% of the packaging in Sweden is never sorted out or collected. It remains in the general household waste stream. The government has decided as a part of adapting to the extended producer responsibility that all Swedes shall have their packaging collected at home by the producers. At present, the introduction is set to 1st January 2023. The idea is that the better service, the higher volumes will be collected. Many municipalities have joined us, TMR, in advance and have already introduced higher service standards for collecting packaging. Most introduce 2 bins with 4 compartments each that you have on your driveway, your own bins, combining separate packaging collection and collection of municipal household waste. In that work together with municipalities, we have learned, firstly, more packaging is collected in a system with better service, proving the government right. They're on the right track. Secondly, the quality of the collected packaging becomes higher. In the old system with public stations, we have had a great challenge with littering. Less known, littering also is inside the containers. Up to 30% of the volume collected in this way is non-packaging waste, not supposed to be there, creating massive obstacles for efficient recycling. So our guess on quality and volume when collecting packaging. Something happens in your mind when we have our own collection point provided at home. The less anonymity and the more individual system, the better care we take of it. Feeling more motivated is of essence, we think. Okay, that was the 3 key factors. So let's go on a little deeper about collection. As I just mentioned, we need to achieve more sorting and higher quality of the collected materials. So coexisting with our other collection efforts, we decided to launch a new collection system with the aim to do so. Our new system is designed for use at home, inside your house or apartment. There is no lid to conceal and the bags are transparent. All to support commitment and responsibility, enhancing the feeling that it is meaningful to sort your packaging. It's not just waste. Perhaps in a little way, we hope starting to transform your used packaging from garbage you want to get rid of into being conceived as the resource from which we can manufacture new useful products or new packaging. So our customers for the pickup service has in their own way proved us right so far, supplying volume and excellent quality. They sort, clean and dry far above our expectations. So we hope pickup service, apart from doing its job, of course, can inspire and perhaps also could lead to new ideas from other actors in this business and concepts, new ideas and concepts to contribute to enhance the chances to reach circularity. More collection with high quality is needed to reach further. Pickup service is, as far as we know, unique both in regard of being on demand and that it is without intermediaries in terms of communicating with the end user of packaging. What makes this stand out, the pickup service, as in our opinion, is not the 3 bags to use for collection, but the opportunity to establish an active relationship with the consumer. TMR as a compliance scheme now has a system with direct contact to the identified individual consumer that wants to recycle packaging. From our perspective, traditional waste management and packaging collection go through a number of intermediaries, meaning the consumer is out of sight and anonymous to us. Food retailers and chains have this opportunity of direct contact already, and similar systems might emerge that way. But a substantial number of our customers as producers, they don't. So we hope and think this system is a new kind of platform to communicate. If used smartly, it will inspire and motivate to support circularity. Finally, I would like to briefly go back to the reuse and the thread of thought that I talked about in the beginning. So a company like TMR going into reuse is sort of self-destructive, really. All we've done, all efforts to help develop new recyclable packaging, smart collection systems, and recycling plants are adapted to single-use packaging. In fact, my company TMR, our core is built on the single-use packaging premises. The whole society seems to be, and my guess or our guess is that for the foreseeable future, it will most likely remain like this. Still, we think we have to join on the reuse journey, if you like, now. And doing so, we will most likely to have to rethink it all. Collection for recycling, not needed anymore. My company, sort of history, I guess. So the thin thread in the dark to follow that I talked about earlier is that we've come to learn with the work through pickup service and that it is possible to connect individually on a massive scale to have a personalized system collecting your used packaging for recycling. So the thread, a simple thought and a question really. Could we develop this service to include and support take back and reuse for smart packaging solutions for your company? So with that thought, and we're hoping there perhaps might be a reuse life for TMR after all. So what do you think? And thank you.
Peter, thank you. Thank you very much. First time I've heard the word reuse terror mentioned, but it is fascinating that we're still stumbling through the world of collection and recycling, and that next phase is crucial. And interestingly, you also touch at the top of the hierarchy, reduce. And I may want to just come on to a bit of a conversation as to whether packaging is actually enabling us to have more and more and more stuff, and we maybe needs to be part of a thing saying, where are we all going as society? But I'll let that one hover along with some of your thoughts about reuse. But for now, Peter, thank you very much indeed. Fascinating to hear your experience and some of your tentative thoughts for the future. I'd like to move on to our third keynote speaker. And delighted we were joined this morning by Birgitte Krenk, who's the Nordic Head of Operations for Nestlé, based in Copenhagen. And I know you've had a long career in Nestlé, including being involved in the Nordic sustainability as a Nordic sustainability manager. Food and those sorts of products are obviously come with particular needs and requirements, and that throws a whole set of challenges around packaging. So Birgit, great to have you with us. Interested to hear how you are wrestling with these challenges and your sense about the future to come. So great to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for inviting me to this session. I will just share my screen here first, and then we'll go into the presentation. So should probably, I hope you can see it now. All right, good. So yeah, I wanted just again, it will be of course very briefly, but just try to give you an overview about how we are working with this circular economy within Nestlé. First, I just wanted to briefly introduce you to myself, just so you know who I am, who is speaking. And let me see if I can get that here. Nope, 2 seconds here. I will, oh, no, I thought I had it. Let me see.
Birgitte, try the keyboard to go to the next slide.
Yes. There it was. I was just too soft there. Thank you. Yeah. So just overall, my name Birgitte Krenk. I've been in Nestlé for about 14 years. I've been living in Sweden for 7 years. Due to that, I was a factory manager at our coffee plant, Svega's coffee factory in Sweden. Then I went with my family to US also within Nestlé and was factory manager there for over 3 years. Came back here to the Nordics, and now I just wanted to show you our few activities that we have in the Nordics. We have few factories, but then of course we have a lot of sales of all our Nestlé products. Today I am a Nordic head of operations. These are our brands, so just a little refresh to just show what kind of products we are selling in the Nordics. So both for like pet food, chocolates, a lot of different coffee brands. We have some breakfast cereals. We have some food products, and of course some baby food. Now getting into the topic for today. So just overall for Nestlé, we are very committed to make this green transformation, and we are committed to have a net zero company by 2050. Now what that all means and a little bit more details I will come into now. Just to tell that to support this whole journey for Nestlé, there has been made a fund within Nestlé that is around $2 billion. And what will that support? Now that is really to help in investing in this waste-free future. So it is a lot about how can we reduce on our usage of virgin plastic and getting into more recycled plastic. It is about how can we change our packaging solutions so we get into these new kind of packagings that has already been talked about by Peter and Per. Then it is also how can we build waste management systems and together with other partners. And then there will be funding for cleaning up in oceans, seas and rivers. And then there is a dedicated amount in how we can support startup companies, again, to invest in this waste-free future. Now, due to timing, I will really focus just on the packaging here in this session. So in the middle of here, you can see our plastic commitments. So or by 2025, 100% of our packaging will be recyclable or reusable. 50% of our content in our PET bottle will be of recycled plastic. And then, as you can see for number 2, we want to play an active role in developing this collecting and sorting and recycling schemes. Now going to help us internally in making this whole transformation of our packaging, we have got a packaging institute, Nestlé Packaging Institute, that is based in Switzerland, in Lausanne. And here we have scientists only working on this and how can we transform our packagings. Now you can see here that is kind of the guidelines that we have. So this is really overall, there is like guidelines for each individual packaging material and how we are going to make the changes. But as you can see overall, we need to support the circular economy, right? How do we go into so we can reuse, recycle our packaging. We always have to eliminate unnecessary headspace, and also we always need to think about how we can reduce our packagings. Then recycled content should be maximized. So wherever we can integrate reused packaging, we should do that. Then also with the local infrastructure, we need to make sure that our packagings can go into future recycling. So that's, I will come back to a little bit about also what we mean by that. And then also that we take a part in communicating with consumers and our community about how we also need to sort our waste afterwards. So, and then there's a whole negative list and also kind of different chemical items that we will not have in our packaging anymore. So the concept is first of all, reduce, then reuse, and then recycle. Now for the reduce, this is just some of the initiatives that we are looking into. And it is really about also reducing plastic where we can. And using more cardboard where we can. It is some of our packagings going away from plastic to paper solutions. So you can see here for some of our chocolate bars that that is being done, has been done, some of it, and then obviously the projects also coming up. Where it makes sense. Obviously, when we are talking about food, there is, of course, the risk of shelf life or that we will damage the product. And that needs, of course, that's a key, of course, that our packaging are keeping our products well, and that, of course, that they have the shelf life that they need and they are safe to eat. Now, the reuse concept we have tested and are testing in few different ways. That's really a challenge to make reuse in a big scale and for food products. Here we are testing it in Finland for our baby food product, and there is also a test going on in Switzerland for our Nescafé, where it's glass jars that you can go and refill your product in the store. Now for recycle, we are then changing our packaging to some materials where we call it overall monomaterials, right? So that we don't combine like plastic and cardboard, so it's difficult to sort afterwards. But we really think about materials that can be recycled, and of course also here do it in cooperation with our local waste management companies, so that we make sure that they can also see that this can be recycled in future, right? Because we know also that it is limited, very limited today to recycle, especially plastic, but we are already now, we need to design it so it can be recycled in future. And then of course also using like tin, where that can go in recycling and maybe reuse in future also. Then, as I said, with the focus areas, one thing is that Nestlé wants to change our packaging, but actually it is as much going in cooperation with companies around us to help in facilitating this circular economy. So what Peter Mellgren also mentioned, we are going in and partly sponsoring this mechanical recycling line in Sweden, and there of course we are very excited and to see how that is going to work out. And as Peter said, first of all, it will probably be an open loop where we can recycle more plastic. But of course, the aim for us is to build a closed loop recycling for plastic so that it can go back into packaging of our food products. But that will of course take time, and also to make sure that we have safe packagings going back into the loop. I will just then talk about a last cooperation we are doing, and that is together with the Danish island just south of Sweden, Bornholm, here we are in a partnership with the local waste management company, and that is they have an ambition about building a waste-free island in 2032. And we go in as partners there to help and see how can we together create this circular economy with focus on the island, as it is a smaller environment where we can do some test and learns, and and see how that can be developed. So that was what I had. So I will stop sharing again.
Birgitte, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Fascinating to hear some of the endeavours going on. I know you're not able to, I think you've got to leave fairly shortly. I just want to ask one question. I'm interested in what's motivating this to happen at a major company like Nestlé. I mean, is it consumers saying we want this? Is it shareholders? Is it bright things working for your business who are coming in with new ideas? Where are you getting that real edge of drive? Because there's 101 reasons not to do this. It takes boldness to do it. What's really motivating this shift?
Yeah, I think it has been under its way for some time, and I think that there is, as you said, there has been pressure from everywhere. So for a long time, as Nestlé is a big company, there is of course a lot of pressure around Nestlé to also be a first mover in this area. So no doubt, when of course Nestlé has been in these statistics for many years about the plastic using and so on, and there is a very, very clear strategy from our senior leaders that we have to be first movers here, and also that we mean Nestlé can have a big impact in our society where we are operating, but also cooperating with our partners to really make a difference. So yes, we have been a part of the issue with plastic, but we want to be an even bigger player when it comes to finding solutions also.
Okay, and I guess you wouldn't underestimate the challenge, because I can kind of see working out some lovely closed loop system in Bornholm sounds very exciting. I'm just thinking, if I go to sub-Saharan Africa or places which don't have any sort of effective systems in place, and almost not a culture, you know, of collection. It must be some real challenges that you're facing around the globe.
Yeah, and I think it is realized that it is it's not a one model fits everywhere. It is that we need in Nestlé to work very local with this, with building circular economy. So it's not like that we are getting a one model guideline from corporate Nestlé saying this is exactly how we need to implement it. This is an area where we need to work locally, and we need to find a model that is fitting into our society, because it will be different.
Okay, well, Birgitte, we wish you well in your endeavours, and when you just have to slip off the conversation, we'll say farewell and thank you very much.
Thank you.
But really interesting, some of the initiatives there. And what I'd like to do now is to bring in our panel. So in addition to our three speakers, we've got three other people very much imbued in this area. And as I just invite them to join me through the wonders of Zoom, what I'd also like to do is to say to everyone, if you've got a comment, an observation, a question, we won't be able to cover all the questions because there's a short session, but it's a good opportunity to just use the chat to offer some suggestions or a thought or a connection. So please do use that, and it's helpful to say who you are, and if you're targeting a question at somebody, do just say who you're targeting. And actually, if you are one of the speakers and you see a question coming up, I see there's one for Peter Mellgren. If you happen to want to reply to a question as one of the speakers or panelists, you're very welcome to do that using the chat function as well. So I'm going to plunge into the forest. Jon Haag, great to have you with us. VP Business and Innovation, Area Material Transition at RISE, Sweden. So your research institute very much looking at innovation in all things sustainable. I know you're involved in circular economy and also looking at the whole packaging area. I mean, just to get your sunrise voice into the conversation, you've heard the three presentations. If you were to offer just a couple of quick initial thoughts into the circularity, sustainability in packaging challenge, what would you highlight as being areas that really need focus, attention, or maybe biggest concerns?
Okay, thank you very much. Nice to be here, I have to say first, and good introduction and presentations we've heard so far today. There are several things to do, and I think when you look at the coming legislation in Europe, you easily understand that we have to do much more than we have been doing the last decade. And as Birgitte mentioned, it's been ongoing for a while, but I think it's actually accelerating and catalyzing right now. So that's a very good thing. But we've done some studies within RISE, and one thing then, the first one that I would like to mention is we foresee a quadruple need of R&D and innovation when it comes to both packaging and recycling, because both those business segments have been a little bit underinvested for a long time. However, it looks a lot better in the Nordics. So as we heard from Nestlé, like Bornholm, they try to be the waste-free society. And I think it's much easier in Bornholm, in the Nordics, than it is in Mallorca or London or South Africa. So of course, it's a good opportunity here. The second point when I'm listening in today is how we're going to manage collection and sorting better. And there I think waste fees, as it is today with Grüne Punkt or FTI in Sweden or whatever, that's a zero-sum game where you only pay yourself free to actually just afford collection and sorting, and that will not work in the future. So we already heard today that maybe other kind of fees or other kind of taxes or deposit system might be much more positive the coming years. And then the third thing is we also heard today there are a lot of white spots in the collection, recycling and reuse system as it is today. And since it's underinvested for many years, we need some big steps to actually be ready for something new 2025 or 2030. And there I see the big positive thing, and the force we are looking at right now is that even big brands, even competitors are doing things together because they know they have to. So that's also on the very positive side.
Jon, thank you very much. Some great issues to throw into the pot, and I'm going to open up some discussion around those in a moment. Just now going to bring in Sofia Erixson. Great to have you with us. Packaging manager at Ingka Gruppen, very much into grocery retail. So I should think you're in exciting, turbulent times, trying to work out how to respond to this agenda. Just yes. Interested whether you've got a couple of thoughts to throw in about this whole transition process, and particularly from yourselves being at the sharp end of having to make this work.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for having me, and thank you for a very interesting presentation earlier. I'm very inspired by you, Birgitte, and your work at Nestlé. I think it's great. And my topics, I think, like Peter said, like multitasking, and that Jon said, it's like we need to work in all areas at the same time, and that's also a very, very big challenge. And from my point of view, because I'm working very close to our consumers, I think consumers' insights going forward is very, very important. and also to educate our consumers how to make the most sustainable choice. And they ask for that. It's hard to know what is a sustainable choice when it comes to packaging because it's very complex. And also, I think because as a packaging developer at ICA, is most of the time I come into a crossroad because I work upstreams, and the crossroad is kind of should we consider carbon footprint, the littering problem, or recyclability. It's very hard today, but I hope in the future, and I'm positive, optimistic that we can join all those together. So, and as Jon said also, we cannot do this. ICA is very big in Sweden, but we're not a big player in Europe, but we know that we cannot do this ourselves, that we need to join forces together and in the whole value circle to be able to do this.
Thank you, Sverige. The words alliances and collaborations are coming out very strongly here. It would be fascinating to develop that conversation, particularly in what is a profoundly competitive marketplace. So that will be interesting. I'd like to bring in our third panelist, Katrin Molina-Besch. Great to have you with us, Associate Senior Lecturer at the Faculty of Engineering in Lund University. And I think your focus area is very much in sustainable packaging development. So very fascinating from your research perspective to get a couple of thoughts into the pot before we further develop the discussion.
Yes, hi, thank you. Well, having listened to the presentations today, what I would like to maybe discuss more also based on my research is the point that packaging is part of a system. And that has been mentioned and touched upon by several of you, like Per has explained how packaging affects product damages and also transport efficiency. And I think IKEA is one of the best companies working with this, making packaging more transport efficiency. And also Birgitte has mentioned the challenge of closing the loop for food packaging and what this means from a food safety perspective that should not be forgotten. So when we discuss how to make packaging more circular to reduce packaging waste, we should also not forget to analyze the impact of these decisions or changes on the total amount of emissions and waste in the supply chain, since packaging is always part of a system. And unfortunately, maybe in the past, mainly packaging waste has been discussed and tried to be addressed in separation from other environmental challenges in society, and that has to change in the future. And so I think it's good that many of you are aware of this, but maybe what needs to be done more is that to look at, I think it's a bit fascinating to say, okay, if it's part of a system, which part of the system do we see as given, and which parts of the system are we willing to adapt? Like sometimes the question, do I adapt the packaging system or do I adapt something in the system around? And like this is kind of a challenge, and it would be interesting to hear more about how the other people here see this, and which things can we change and which things, because it's kind of easy to always say we change the packaging system because maybe it's the cheapest part of the system, but maybe that's not the wisest thing.
Very interesting. Like all these things, you start thinking, this is eminently solvable, and then you suddenly realize interlinking complexity. But thank you for that. I'd like to bring our speakers back in so that I can really have a kind of fireside chat with you all. We're not going to solve this morning. Well, maybe we will, but I don't think we will. I'm just intrigued. What we have inherited, or what we've got now, is an unholy mess. Everybody's worked out their own little bit of packaging, their own system for doing stuff, their own materials. It's an absolute, and you look internationally, you look nationally, you look regionally, you look in municipalities, everything is different. You look at every single different producer, they're all doing different stuff. Every company's doing their own thing. And I'm just trying to work out whether a couple of words have been said about alliances and connecting, and maybe towards some hint of standardization. I just wonder, anyone would like to offer me some sense as to how we move in that direction of just from this web of crazy disconnected complexity into something a bit more coherent? Is this going to be business leaders with their value chains, the big multinationals? Is it going to be government? Someone give me a sense of how we, particularly within the sort of recycling area of circularity, we begin to bring a bit of simplicity and coherence? Or is it a mess and it's always going to be? Who would like to offer me a response to that picture I painted? Per first, and then I'll come to Jon.
I mean, it is a complex problem, as you say, and I'll maybe take up one aspect of it, not the only one that is there, but I think it has to do with sharing information and building competence. The designers needs to know what happens to the products at the end of the life, which I think has been a challenge in time, and really to start a dialogue between designers, packaging designers, product designers, and the rest of the players in the value chain, so to say, and really start to figure out what matters and what not matters. Because if you sit in your little silo, you optimize from your point of view everything that might not be of any importance whatsoever when it comes later.
And in a company like IKEA, I mean, you've got huge clout. You can obviously organize things within your system. Are you reaching out and connecting with other major players and, being part of a mutually supporting system, or are you just trying to get your particular house in order?
We have tried to get our house in order for many years, but it's the realization here now is that we can't do that by ourselves. Yeah. That's why we had, the fourth goal for circular economy is doing together. Otherwise, it will not work. And it's a transition. It's a huge transition. You need to change a lot of mindsets and the culture, I would say, but really and really find the ways of spreading this knowledge. And I heard from Birgitte as well that the dialogues are starting to happen between big companies and recycling companies, which we are also doing. But I still believe we are far from where we should be. So there's a journey.
Okay. Jon, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, and I think we must dare to speak much more openly the coming years about how difficult this is. Because the problems of packaging is something that most of the companies, even the packaging producers and the brands, have been avoiding, so to speak. But if you are like IKEA or Nestlé or Ingka, as we have here in the panel today, you have thousands of stock keeping units. And if you now have new legislation 2025, there are a few hundred or 1,000 products that you should change every year. And that's a hard thing to do. But by being open with this, then maybe the good fund of $2 billion from Nestlé and some efforts from Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the Circular Economy 100 group and so on, you could start standardizing and say, if you go to monomaterial, try to do white and transparent polypropylene. And then you can have a much better system on that side. Also try to be open that maybe in Northern Europe, carton and cardboard boxes are very good, but in Shanghai, polypropylene might be better. I'm not saying it is so, but probably there are local and regional differences that we cannot change quick enough.
Okay.
So, but speaking much more openly about the problem will solve a lot of things quicker.
Okay. I just want to take this forward. We talk about a circular economy, and that is it's an economy in that it's got to work as a financial model, because if it doesn't work as a business model, then it won't happen. I'm just interested, and I don't know whether Peter wants to come in or Birgitte. in one sense, we're imposing all sorts of additional things that have to be done. We've got a very unsophisticated reprocessing world, or it's not maybe fit for purpose. I'm interested in perspectives as to whether you can see that there is a business model that works for circularity, because you're shifting large volume, low value material around. Does this stack up? Is this going to stack up? Birgitte?
Yeah, I can just before I leave also here, but I think to the point also that just were here before, for us, what we have realized is that we need these partnerships, right? And that's also why, for example, with TMR also, that we have had a lot of, we have projects together and so on. We need to team up across to try to set up, and I don't think anyone really have the end solution. So for us, we call it test and learn, right? We need to try something, and maybe we are failing in some area, and maybe in other areas we will then see, this is working out, right? And then, but we need to do something. So I think that just the mindset of getting things started, connecting. We've tried to have some webinars also like this one. It's great, right? Because now we start sharing things, and we can spread knowledge, and we can say what we are doing and sharing. So I think that there is a lot of what we just have to come outside our companies and really start cooperating and sharing, because this topic will not be solved by us sitting in each of our companies, right? That's what we are realizing, right?
Great.
And I think when it comes to this with getting, of course, also the legislation in place here also, yeah, but for Nestlé side, and I know that's for a lot of big companies, we have people in Brussels, right, that are also trying to get into the context, explain what we are doing, and how could it be set up for future, and so on. So of course we need to do that. And the last point I wanted to say is we need to do it locally, and that's to this. We need to do things because there's so many different setups just in the Nordic, where in the Nordic countries, right? We see so many different setups. So we have to start locally and build things, and maybe when we are successful in something, we can actually then repeat it in other countries, right, also. So
okay, thanks.
Just some reflections.
So great thoughts, and
thank you.
Great to have you with us, and so glad I'm getting the message that Nestlé is open for the conversation. So I'm sure
Absolutely.
We'll have you as a major player in the journey forwards. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to just come back to the question I was asking about. Basically this has to be a model that kind of works financially, and it's also building on something that's come in from chat from Marta Kritza, saying how do circular methods and implementation change companies' business metrics, e.g., profitability, margins, ROI, etc. So I'm interested whether anyone wants to comment on the revolution that's taking place in order to embrace circularity, obviously particularly in packaging. What's that happening within companies? Peter, do you want to come in?
Yes. Well, as Birgitte said, we're not working in a blank sheet, really. There is a lot of initiatives going on, and in the Nordic countries we're better off than many other places. But it's still, all this work has to be done with respect of the local situation, really. So using the local good ideas and working systems and then talking about it like we do now, and sort of connecting with others. It's like a good example can start to live its life of its own. And for the business part, I think, well, is there a business model to support this? We're coming in Sweden anyway. We're coming from a situation where, with the fees, as you know, the packaging fees have been. And the system has, in order to achieve what we want to now, and the system has been under-financed by sort of low expectations, no interest really. It's just these last 3 years, it's been like a rocket development of interest. and it helps us to convey the sort of that acceptance for that this there has to be a cost in this in order for us to achieve what we want to do. And so the support of legislation in each nation, like in Sweden, that's very important. And that's also happening now with the, so it's like two steps, one step forward and two back, and we're not on so it's the legislator and the development on the market, they're not actually on par really. Yeah. So it needs to be, we need the support of the legislation, and we need this extended producer responsibility to really go in and start working, because it's been underfinanced. And so, yeah, thank you.
I'll come to Sofia and then Jon. You know, you're at the sharp end, Sofia. You know, are you seeing a changed business model? Is my Apple going to cost more money because of all this glorious move towards circularity? How is it impacting in terms of the business model?
I think this is a very interesting question and topic, because it's a challenge. From a private label perspective, we want to have a good pricing towards our consumers, and but I think it depends, because we have so many units, and it depends what kind of product is on article level. What can we do what can we do biggest impact for the environment and the business model? It's like going hand in hand. But I think a big challenge is even from the 50s, a packaging should cost nothing and be lightweighted. And now we need to rethink the whole system, and that's to be able to in a pricing level and for a purchase perspective, it's a very big challenge, because also all the machinery is very heavily automated, and to change to a more sustainable material will cost in the end. And as you, Peter, as a consumer, are you willing to pay more for a sustainable package?
Interesting. Jon, you were going to come in on this.
Yeah, and I think two aspects that I think is worth mentioning here, and because you asked a lot about new business models, and I think we should see this as digitalization, more or less. So from today and onwards, you should never change a packaging without thinking digitalization and business model at the same time, because pure substitution will not change the system. So you can of course find low-hanging fruit, but low-hanging fruit will never help you to the next level or make you much better than competition, for example. So, and then to play with this, I also think something very important that Per mentioned from IKEA, we need to engage the consumer. And then you can say, okay, how can I change my business model and maybe digitalization so I engage the consumer? And then you're going to have some winning concepts, and it could be deposit scheme, it could be loyalty clubs, it could be, I don't know, we saw the refilling of Nescafé freeze-dried coffee from Nestlé. What if you bought a glass jar with hundreds of free reloads, for example? Then of course it's a cash flow problem for some customers maybe. So, but you could play around with those three things: business model, digitalization, and consumer engagement, and then you're going to have a much higher hit rate for success.
Right. Okay, Katrin, I wonder if you want to come in on this, particularly around the business metrics side.
I also think regarding like what Sofia said on that before, the packaging should be as cheap as possible and as lightweight as possible. But I mean, that comes also because it was in a linear system where it was just to be used and then it was wasted and no one was interested in its value. But if we are thinking circularity, I mean, then there is even opportunity to say, but then it's a good thing actually if it's more expensive in the first place, but then it will also have a value, and that the material has a value that someone is interested to use afterwards, and hopefully the producer is interested in getting this material back, and then it would work much better than like with the packaging solutions we have at the moment that were not designed for in this way.
Can I find it staggering. It still seems perfectly possible and profitable and cheap to do the wrong thing. And you know, right through from manufacturers to retailers to consumers as well. You know, what was it, 40% of recyclable waste in Sweden still going in the general gunk? I mean, wow, that's incredible. I'm just wondering, I mean, the real pressure to change the game here. You know, I can hear leading companies engaging their brains, and that's brilliant, and doing things. I mean, is it fundamentally about legislation? Is it about policy? Is it about seriously taxing, disincentivizing bad practice and incentivizing new? And that's something that only government can really shake this through. Or do we just rely on bright brains and an iterative approach? I'm just interested in perspectives on what's going on in terms of policy, legislation, and its impact. Sofia, do you want to offer a first thought?
No, I just have a thought, because it's I think to make this quicker, as we have to, the government or legislation needs to help out. But the challenge with the legislation, that it needs to be very fast, is that sometimes they miss the holistic perspective, because it's a complex question, very, very complex. But I think we need to do that. That's my personal opinion, I would say, to be able to do this quicker.
Okay, Jon.
Yeah, and I think we done some scenario analysis, how to get to a green circular future, you could say. And one problem right now is that we call it we're stuck in the mud, because we have a lot of problems and it's too complex, so we can't solve everything with packaging at once. Then we're heading into scenario 2 with high speed, which we called is the blame game, where different countries and different politicians are going to blame one material or one system. And then we have the problem, because all the brands and all the packaging producers, they are looking for value creation. And in a blame game, when legislation always comes first, it's very hard for many to make money. And if you don't make money, you can't improve the system, and then you maybe doesn't exist anymore. So industry needs to get in the driving seat, showing that we can make things simpler, faster, better, more or less.
Yeah, and what's your marks out of 10 for what's emerging at a European level in terms of circular economy as it maybe relates to packaging? Do you want to offer a 1 out of 10 for what seems to be going there to help create the right environment?
Specific examples, you mean?
No, I'm just wondering how you believe that the emerging policy frameworks that are going to support this transition, just interested in a snapshot sense of doing a great job could do better from a
we have some good examples actually on that, I think. And one is the plastic bag bans, which went like a flood wave. And then, of course, things change in many countries at the same time, which is positive. You can also see from history that PET bottles came from maybe 0 recycling rate, and today in the Nordics 85%, because they have an own deposit system. We also see maybe some threats, like if we say in the Nordics we like Tetra Pak a lot, maybe Tetra Pak is not allowed anymore if we look fundamentalistic on the new legislations. So then of course you force innovation to happen. But you don't never know. In a blame game scenario, you never know if you change from A to B, if B is really better, because you was forced to change.
Okay. Per, you were going to come in just about the influence of policymakers within this space.
And I mean, you're totally right. There is a challenge to make the economic model work, because I mean, let's face it, we have a linear economy since 250 years. We have been, optimizing that very well. and we have the volume there. One key to make this work is, of course, that we invest as companies in new circular solutions. We put the money there to create a volume that will make it viable. But to do this, of course, all companies need stability and understanding of the future. And here comes policy, super important, into the equation. If you don't know the future, how can you invest in the future? And I think what is happening right now as you speak in Brussels is super interesting. And I think also we have, as a company, the role to engage in a dialogue to bring on the experiences that we have got in the field into that legislation as well. So we do sort of the effective things, and that will enable us then as well to do the investments. So I think stability, understanding will create the opportunities to invest, and the investments will create then the opportunity to have a positive business model.
Okay. I feel we've hardly scratched the surface, but we're coming towards the end of our conversation. But that just shows what a significant topic this is. One angle, I think I'm looking for maybe a final thought or a message from each of you. And I'm looking for a particular Nordic angle to this. You may not be aware, if you're within the Nordic countries, that outside we kind of look to the Nordic countries with a certain reverence, that somehow you are the intellectual powerhouse of transformation to sustainability. It might be USA in 5 years' time. Who knows? I don't know. But at the moment, you occupy quite a special place, and I'm just interested. If history books were to be written and they look back at the next 5 years and said, wow, the Nordic countries did something extraordinary, a quantum change that really shook us onto a new momentum around circularity, and particularly highlighted through the packaging issue. I'm just wondering whether you have a thought, an idea, a big idea, a something that might be emerging or could emerge within the Nordic bloc that was a creative idea to really get us moving at a greater scale and trajectory. What is your offering to the world? And if anyone is on the chat, and I know there are lots of people listening in, if you want to offer your big idea for Nordic leadership on this, then very interested to hear it. Who would like to start? Sofia.
Yes, thank you. I hope that we can have the highest collecting rates within Sweden, that we as all listeners, we are all also consumers, and we have the responsibility to collect and recycle our packaging. And the rates at plastic, it's super low, even in Sweden. And so I really hope that we can have the highest rate in the future.
Okay, so huge energy in trying to get everyone engaged in increasing an effective collection rates. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I just want to say to Per that IKEA did a wonderful commercial thing about this last fall regarding this to motivate consumers. And I hope that we at IKEA can do the same in the future. I just want to say that. Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Katrin,
Thank you, Sofia.
A thought from you.
Yeah, I think something that we also talked about, and for example, Peter mentioned, is that I think if the Nordics want to take the lead, what I think they should do is, or try to find the reuse, like also step up on the reuse. Yes, recycling is important, and there will still be disposable packaging in the future. But if we want more circularity and solve a lot of the issues, we also must see where can we have reuse system, for what type of product does it make sense, and if we could demonstrate that we can make it happen, that would be really great.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Peter, can I come to you next? Your big idea for Nordic leadership.
Well, it's a big question though, but conscious consumers, I think we have a lot in Sweden, and to inspire people to think more about circularity and packaging. It's perhaps the way forward. Trying to involve consumers, like technically, like communication, giving you and me a chance to be heard, really,
right.
and involving in the process. Like these are big systems now, and you're sort of a very little part of it. But it needs to be focused on you, not
right.
That's what I think is the way forward. And consumer power, of course, and a very conscious new generation now coming up. They won't accept anything else than companies and products that have thought through this issue. So I have a great hope in the next generation of consumers.
Okay, and maybe that's something where true collaboration can happen between governments, municipalities, businesses, all sorts. So thank you very much for that. Per, can I come to you? We heard it first on the 4th of February, your great new idea, another great idea emerging from IKEA for Nordic leadership. I want you to say, I'm just going to let the cat out. She's decided that it's 11 o'clock. It's a half a tick.
So I mean, I have to go back.
There you are. Martha is happy. The cat is out.
Good. It's important to take care of the cat. Absolutely. I mean, I need to go back to maybe things I've said before. It's about breaking the silos. I hope that the Nordic countries could be really the place where we break down these silos and sort of match the material we collect with the needs of production in a better way. Today, it's too much inefficiencies that leads to the low recycling for plastic, for instance. There's a big need, there's a big offer, but there is no match. We match like this today. So let's hope that the Nordics will be the great example of having this information flow and sharing that enables this.
Right. And finally, partly because you got the best backdrop, Jon, but also you've thrown in, I think, a number of thoughts and big ideas. But if all the big ideas, you were to choose the biggest, best idea for really accelerating the trajectory towards circularity in the packaging world, which one would you pluck out?
I think it's not the big idea. I think it's why it might happen in the Nordics. And as we heard, so I'm just repeating some of the other panelists here because we think alike. I mean, we're trendy in Scandinavia. We are a lot of early movers. So if you look at the world, you have like Stockholm, Copenhagen, and California are the biggest early mover collection you can find. So if you're going to try new business models like reuse and everything, it will, of course, evolve quicker in an early mover environment. We are very good in collaboration. So when you look at innovation scoreboards and everything, and Sweden, Finland, Denmark pops up in top 5, it's because we collaborate within industries and between industries. And I think both when we look at reuse and recycle and maybe then upcycling, it is maybe packaging, plastic, textile, building materials. You're going to find collaboration to make it quicker and better. So it's not, if we should break the silos, as Per says, it's not just a packaging question.
Right.
It's a material circularity question.
Brilliant. Jon, Per, Peter, Katrin, Sofia, thank you very much for your thoughts. We've just given a further spin to the ball of circularity. The further we get down the circularity path, the more complex we realize it is, and finding solutions is not easy. But maybe more and more people are getting engaged in this conversation and in action. So I'm heartened by what I've heard. Not that there aren't huge challenges, but there seems to be a real will to try and find a way through. And there's no doubt that the consumer at the end of the day is going to be a critical part of these conversations and these movements. So if I could thank you all for your time and for your contributions, if I could thank everybody who joined the webinar, we hope you've drawn something of interest from that. And just to remind you that we hope the main conference, the Circular Materials Conference, will be taking place at Chalmers in Gothenburg on the 21st and 22nd of April. It's going to be a hybrid, so it's going to be online, we hope, as well as some elements that are going to be live. So please put that in the diary one way or t'other. But for now, keep the faith. Keep moving circular. We hope something has stimulated a thought in your own area of work, and we thank everybody for their involvement and look forward to seeing you, hopefully, one way or another in April. All the very best. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Peter.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.